My life, it truly was a masterpiece. A beautifully woven tapestry of love, laughter, and unwavering trust. I genuinely believed I possessed everything one could ever desire: a loving husband, Mark, who wasn't just my partner but my closest confidant, the steadfast anchor of our entire family. Then there was our brilliant son, Ethan, a talented young man brimming with boundless potential, eagerly poised to carve out his own promising future. We were, by all accounts, that ideal family, admired by our neighbors, the very embodiment of domestic bliss, meticulously built upon core foundations of loyalty, honesty, and an unbreakable bond. I held these values sacred, believing them to be the absolute bedrock of everything we cherished. Our home wasn't merely a house, it was a sanctuary, a haven of profound warmth and undeniable security, where I consistently felt safe, utterly loved, and completely certain of my place in this world. It was a life I had painstakingly built, nurtured with every fiber of my being, a future I truly believed would last forever, eternally undisturbed. But then, as if a cruel, unseen hand reached out and violently ripped through an idyllic dream, that perfect canvas was abruptly torn apart, shredded into a million irreparable pieces by a single, devastating moment. I found myself plunged headfirst into a nightmare I never could have conceived, one that shattered not just my perception, but the very essence of my existence. That fateful day, forever etched into the darkest, most agonizing corners of my memory, began as any other ordinary morning, deceptively serene. I was engrossed in mundane tasks, perhaps humming a forgotten tune, entirely oblivious to the catastrophic storm gathering just beyond my unsuspecting perception. The precise details remain a chaotic blur, a sickening jumble of images and raw, visceral sensations, yet the feeling itself remains painfully clear, sharp as a freshly honed blade. I stumbled upon them, my husband, and my son's fiancée. Just let that unthinkable scenario sink in for a moment. My husband, with my son's fiancée. It sounds utterly insane, doesn't it? Even now, trying to vocalize it, the words feel foreign, grotesque, like a cruel, malicious joke conjured by a truly malevolent universe. It was a scene no mother, no wife, no human being should ever be forced to witness. A betrayal so profound, so utterly unthinkable, it quite literally stopped time. The air rushed from my lungs in a silent, desperate gasp I didn't even realize I was making. My heart, a moment ago beating steadily with the rhythm of everyday life, simply ceased its function. It felt as if a colossal, invisible wall had suddenly materialized and slammed directly into my chest, knocking the very breath and soul out of me. Every nerve ending screamed in agonizing protest. My vision blurred, then sharpened with terrifying clarity, focusing with horrifying precision on the two figures before me, their actions a stark, undeniable testament to the ultimate deceit. I stood there, utterly paralyzed, a silent scream trapped deep within my throat, my mind desperately trying to process the impossible, to reconcile the loving man I thought I knew with the stranger standing there, systematically demolishing my entire world. The pain was an immediate inferno, raging through my veins, quickly followed by a cold, searing wave of rage and the crushing, suffocating weight of betrayal. Every cherished memory, every shared whisper, every sacred promise crumbled to dust around me. I genuinely believed, in that agonizing instant, that I had finally grasped the full, devastating extent of my torment, that this was the most sickening, painful affair imaginable. But oh, how incredibly, terrifyingly wrong I was. What I initially perceived as the apex of my suffering was merely the prologue to an even more sinister, soul-shattering chapter. The ultimate bombshell was yet to drop, poised to detonate and obliterate the last vestiges of my sanity. Because the biggest shock, the truly mind-numbing revelation, wasn't just the fact of their infidelity, but the horrifying truth of who she truly was. You see, when I finally managed to piece together the shattered fragments of what I was witnessing, When I looked beyond the initial overwhelming shock and saw her face with terrifying clarity, a chilling, inescapable realization dawned on me, one that sent an icy shiver straight through to my very bones. This woman, my son's supposed future wife, the one intimately entwined in my husband's arms, she was my sister. My sister. The sister I had mourned for years, who had vanished from my life ages ago after a bitter, explosive family quarrel, leaving an unfillable void and a scar that had never truly healed. The very same sister I had secretly hoped to reconcile with someday. My own flesh and blood, standing there, involved with my husband, poised to marry my innocent son. The sheer impossibility of it crashed over me like a relentless tidal wave. My brain simply struggled to compute such an unthinkable reality. It felt like an elaborate, twisted joke, a cruel theatrical performance designed solely for my torment. My sister. How could this be? Why would she do this? The questions swirled ceaselessly, a dizzying maelstrom of confusion, despair, and profound disbelief. And the true horror? The truly soul-crushing detail, the sickening twist, was the undeniable, monstrous fact that my husband had known. He had known her true identity all along. He had actively conspired, not merely in an affair, but in a monumental, insidious deception, meticulously concealing their relationship and her real identity for years. He had orchestrated this elaborate charade right under my unsuspecting nose, allowing her to infiltrate our family, to become engaged to our pure-hearted son, all while harboring this unspeakable, monstrous secret. This wasn't merely an act of infidelity. This was a calculated, insidious plot, a sophisticated web of lies, a sinister family conspiracy I could never have imagined, designed to systematically unravel the very fabric of our lives, to inflict maximum pain and destruction. The sensation of betrayal, already a crushing weight, now multiplied exponentially, escalating into an unbearable torment. It wasn't just the man I had given my entire heart and life to who had utterly shattered my trust. It was my own flesh and blood, my sister, who had orchestrated a scheme so vile, so incomprehensible, it defied all understanding. My husband, who had sworn eternal vows, had been living a grotesque double life, not only deceiving me in the cruelest way imaginable but also, indirectly, pushing our unsuspecting son into a deeply toxic and potentially catastrophic relationship. He had become an active accomplice in the slow, agonizing destruction of his own family, of his own son's future. The perfect picture of my life, once so vibrant and clear, was now a fractured mosaic of deceit, resentment, and unimaginable pain. This wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a catastrophic unraveling of our entire family unit, threatening to consume us all in its destructive wake. This story you're about to hear is one of survival, of navigating the most treacherous emotional landscape imaginable. It's about facing the unimaginable truth, the gut-wrenching pain of being betrayed by the two people you trusted most in this world, and witnessing your own son caught in the crossfire of their toxic machinations. It's about how you pick up the pieces when your entire reality has been shattered into unrecognizable fragments. How do you protect an innocent child from such a devastating truth when you yourself are drowning in a sea of shock and despair? This journey is about unearthing the motives behind such shocking deception, confronting the deepest betrayals, and ultimately, finding the strength to rebuild a life from the ashes, not just for myself, but for my son. This is my truth, raw and unfiltered, a testament to resilience in the face of absolute family destruction. Stick around, because this story, filled with family secrets, shocking reveals, and a battle for survival, is far from over. This is my truth, raw and unfiltered, a testament to resilience in the face of absolute family destruction. Stick around, because this story, filled with family secrets, shocking reveals, and a battle for survival, is far from over. The perfect picture of my life, one-eyed meticulously painted with strokes of love, loyalty, and unwavering devotion, shattered into a million irreparable pieces on one fateful day. I had believed in the sanctity of marriage, the unbreakable bond of family, the inherent goodness of those closest to me. My husband, the man who had sworn eternal vows, my talented son, the light of my life, and our cozy, loving home, they formed the bedrock of my existence. I was a woman who truly believed in happily ever after, naive as that sounds now. My world was warm, predictable, and safe. Then, in an instant, everything I cherished, everything I thought I knew, imploded. I was thrust into a living nightmare, a terrifying abyss where betrayal didn't just strike from the one I trusted most, but also concealed a devastating secret powerful enough to obliterate my entire life. The sheer scale of the deception was beyond anything my worst fears could have conjured. I caught my husband with my son's fiancée. Let that sink in. It sounds utterly insane, doesn't it? It was a scene no mother, no wife, no human being should ever have to witness. The image is burned into my memory, a searing brand on my soul. My breath hitched, caught in my throat, and for a terrifying second, my heart simply stopped beating. The world tilted on its axis, the familiar walls of my home seemed to spin, and a deafening silence enveloped me. I stood there, rooted to the spot, utterly paralyzed, feeling as if an invisible, icy spear had just pierced through my very core. The pain was immediate, sharp, and visceral. It was a crushing wave of agony, swiftly followed by a scalding rage and a profound sense of betrayal that threatened to drown me whole. My mind struggled to process what my eyes were seeing, desperately searching for an alternative explanation, a way to rewind time, but there was none. Initially, I thought I had grasped the full horror of it all. This was a grotesque, painful affair, a sickening infidelity that would undoubtedly tear my family apart. That alone was a devastating blow, a betrayal so deep it felt like a physical wound. The man I had shared decades with, built a life with, raised a child with, was engaged in an unthinkable act with a woman poised to marry our son. The sheer impropriety, the violation of every moral and familial boundary, was unfathomable. My son, my innocent, unsuspecting son, was about to marry a woman who was intimately involved with his own father. The implications were horrifying, a twisted web of deceit that already felt impossible to untangle. I wrestled with the immediate shock, the suffocating anger, and the agonizing question of why. Why would he do this to us? Why would he jeopardize everything for such a cheap, sordid secret? But the greatest shock, the most earth-shattering revelation, wasn't merely this simple act of betrayal. It came when I finally recognized her. My mind, reeling from the initial blow, had struggled to piece together the details, the familiar curves of her face, the way she moved. And then, it hit me with the force of 1,000 lightning bolts. It was her. She was my sister. My heart didn't just stop that time. It imploded. My long-lost sister, the one I had mourned, the one I believed had vanished from my life years ago after a horrifying family argument, stood before me, entangled with my husband, the future mother-in-law to my son. The air left my lungs completely. This wasn't just an affair. This was a meticulously crafted deception, a venomous conspiracy woven into the very fabric of my family. And then, the second, even more terrifying realization dawned on me. My husband knew. He had known her true identity all along. He had actively participated in this elaborate charade, concealing their twisted relationship and her real identity for years. This wasn't a sudden lapse in judgment. This was a calculated, prolonged act of deceit, a cold-blooded betrayal that spanned not just our marriage, but generations. The betrayal now doubled, intensified 100-fold, not just from the man I had given my life to, but also from my own flesh and blood. This complex, sickening relationship had exposed a sophisticated plot, a family conspiracy so insidious, so profoundly evil, that I could never have imagined it in my darkest nightmares. The man who had vowed to cherish and protect me, the father of my child, had been living a double life, not only deceiving me but also indirectly pushing our son into a deeply toxic and incestuous relationship. And my sister? Why would she do this? Was it a calculated act of revenge for our past, a twisted form of retribution for an old wound? Or was it simply pure selfishness, a ruthless ambition to utterly destroy my happiness? Psychologically, I traversed every agonizing spectrum of pain and torment. From the initial, numbing shock to an explosive, uncontrollable rage that threatened to consume me, then to a profound, soul-crushing disappointment, and finally, an overwhelming sense of desolate emptiness and utter hopelessness. My entire belief system, in humanity, in love, in the sacred bonds of family, shattered into irretrievable fragments. How could I ever look at my husband, at my sister, or even at my son, without feeling a wave of nausea, a suffocating blanket of distrust? I began to question everything. Was I a terrible mother for not recognizing the insidious evil lurking within my son's relationship? Was I too naive, too trusting, too blind to the malice hiding within the people I loved most? These torturous questions relentlessly gnawed at my mind, transforming every night into a relentless internal battle, leaving me exhausted and broken. My mother-son relationship, the one sacred bond one thought untouchable, was also severely threatened. My son, an innocent victim caught in this cruel, intricate play, now faced an unimaginable shock and immense emotional trauma. How could I possibly protect him from this brutal, ugly truth? How could I help him heal when I myself was crumbling under the weight of my own anguish? This was more than just a personal crisis. It was an existential challenge, a fight for survival not just for myself, but for the very future of our family. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that the path ahead would be fraught with insurmountable obstacles, demanding an extraordinary level of resilience to confront, to heal, and ultimately, to rebuild my shattered life. I had to find a way to overcome this psychological shock, not just for my own sanity, but for my son's future. The journey to survive this horrifying betrayal began with the agonizing acceptance of the truth, no matter how cruel or unbearable it was. I had to face the pain head-on, refusing to shy away from its brutal reality. I sought immediate help from mental health professionals, desperate to unravel the layers of deception, to understand the hidden motives, and most importantly, to forge a path towards healing for myself and for my son. This process demanded immense patience, unwavering courage, and an iron will. I had to learn to shed the burdens that were not mine to carry, to understand that their transgressions were a reflection of them, not a reflection of my worth. I began the painstaking process of learning to forgive, not for the sake of those who committed these heinous acts, but for my own liberation, to release myself from the chains of bitterness and resentment, allowing myself the freedom to move forward, to breathe again, and to rebuild. Ultimately, no matter how cruelly life tests us, we always possess the inherent strength to rise again, to redefine what happiness means, and to discover a more powerful, resilient version of ourselves. My story stands as a harrowing testament that while betrayal can utterly shatter a family, it can also forge an indomitable will to survive, igniting an extraordinary inner strength previously unknown. If you have ever experienced a betrayal of similar magnitude, please know that you are not alone in your suffering, and a path to healing always exists, even when it feels completely obscured. Share your story, reach out, and together, we can find hope in the darkest of times. Indeed, that message of shared humanity, of recognizing that our deepest wounds can also be the catalyst for profound connection, became my anchor. When betrayal strikes, especially from those you hold closest, the initial shock isolates you in a chamber of disbelief and agonizing pain. You question everything you thought was real, every memory, every whispered promise. The world tilts on its axis, and you're left scrambling for solid ground in a landscape that has suddenly become a treacherous quicksand of lies and deceit. It's a terrifying solitude, where the whispers of doubt can be deafening, making you feel like you are the only one who has ever faced such an unthinkable cruelty. But as I stumbled through those first agonizing days, then weeks, I slowly began to realize the truth. This insidious darkness, while uniquely personal in its horror, is a shadow many have battled. My journey, though born of a singular, gut-wrenching event, resonated with a universal cry for understanding, for justice, and ultimately, for peace. The sheer weight of what had happened, the layers of deception meticulously woven by my husband and my own sister, threatened to crush me. The man I had loved, cherished, and built a life with, and the woman who shared my blood, my childhood, my very DNA, had conspired in a betrayal so profound it felt like a violation of my soul. It wasn't just an affair, it was an intricately plotted destruction of my trust, my family, and my perception of reality. The pain was physical, a constant ache in my chest, a knot in my stomach that refused to loosen. Sleep offered no escape, only vivid replays of the horrifying scene, the shattered illusion. Every morning felt like waking up to the same nightmare, the same heavy weight of sorrow pressing down, making even the simplest tasks feel monumental. The emotional landscape within me became a war zone. There were moments of incandescent rage, a firestorm that threatened to consume me whole.
How could they? How dare they?
These questions screamed silently in my mind, echoing the fury that coursed through my veins. Then came the crushing waves of grief, not just for the loss of my marriage or the bond with my sister, but for the loss of the future I had envisioned, the innocence of my past, and the very foundation of my family. It was a grief so profound it felt like a death, the death of everything I had held sacred. Alongside this torment, a chilling sense of confusion lingered, an almost obsessive need to understand the why. Why my sister? Why my husband? What dark motivations could drive such calculated cruelty? Was it revenge? Greed? A twisted sense of power? The answers felt like elusive ghosts, tormenting me with their absence. I tried to make sense of it, to piece together the fragments of shattered memories, searching for clues I might have missed, red flags I had ignored. This self-blame, a cruel byproduct of betrayal, was almost as destructive as the betrayal itself. I scrutinized every interaction, every casual glance, every hushed conversation, agonizing over how I could have been so blind, so naive. The insidious nature of their deceit, the meticulous way they had hidden their relationship under the guise of family closeness, made me question my own judgment, my own perception of people. It was a terrifying unraveling, a dismantling of my very self, piece by agonizing piece. The thought of confronting them, of demanding answers, filled me with both dread and a desperate need for closure. But what kind of closure could truly mend a wound so deep, a fracture so fundamental? The truth, however ugly, demanded to be faced. I understood then, with a clarity born of absolute despair, that I could not navigate this treacherous terrain alone. The psychological toll was too immense, the emotional labyrinth too complex. I was drowning in a sea of despair, and I needed a lifeline. It was a moment of stark realization, a raw admission of my own vulnerability. I needed help, professional guidance, to disentangle the knots of lies and reclaim my shattered sense of self. This wasn't about weakness, it was about survival, about finding the strength to rebuild from the ashes. That lifeline arrived in the form of a dedicated therapist, a compassionate guide who helped me navigate the treacherous currents of my trauma. She didn't offer easy answers, but instead provided a safe space to unravel the intricate tapestry of manipulation and gaslighting that had been woven around me for years. It was through these sessions that I began to understand the psychological dynamics at play, recognizing the classic signs of narcissistic behavior and deep-seated deception. Slowly, painstakingly, I learned to distinguish between what was real and what was a carefully constructed illusion. The truth, when fully faced, was brutal, yet profoundly liberating. It allowed me to shed the heavy burden of self-blame and place accountability where it truly belonged, squarely on the shoulders of my husband and my sister. Confrontation, when it came, was not a dramatic outburst but a calculated, deliberate act. Setting boundaries, firm and unyielding, became a crucial act of self-preservation. It meant accepting that the people I thought I knew were strangers, capable of unimaginable cruelty. It meant grieving the living, accepting that certain relationships were irrevocably broken, and that was okay. The process of rebuilding my identity was a marathon, not a sprint. The woman who had been so defined by her roles as wife, sister, and mother in that seemingly perfect family unit was gone. In her place, a new self had to emerge, scarred but resilient. I rediscovered hobbies I had abandoned, reconnected with friends who offered unconditional support, and found solace in new passions that affirmed my worth independently of anyone else's validation. Every small step, every moment of self-care, was an act of defiance against the narrative of betrayal. Most importantly, I focused on my son. He was an innocent victim in this cruel drama, his own world shattered by the revelation of his father's and his fiancée's deceit. Guiding him through his shock and profound hurt became my primary mission. We sought therapy together, creating a space for him to process his anger, confusion, and grief. It was a delicate dance between protecting him from the full ugliness of the truth and empowering him with honest information, helping him understand that his father's choices were not a reflection of his own worth. Our bond, once threatened, became an unbreakable lifeline, strengthened by our shared vulnerability and our commitment to healing together. We faced the future hand in hand, determined to redefine what family meant, not by blood or marriage, but by genuine love, integrity, and unwavering support. The path ahead is still long, still winding, but I carry with me not the weight of betrayal, but the lightness of liberation. This painful chapter didn't diminish me. It forged me anew into a stronger, wiser version of myself, capable of enduring and thriving beyond even the most devastating betrayals. The path ahead is still long, still winding, but I carry with me not the weight of betrayal, but the lightness of liberation. This painful chapter didn't diminish me. It forged me anew into a stronger, wiser version of myself, capable of enduring and thriving beyond even the most devastating betrayals. This lightness, this profound sense of liberation, didn't arrive in a single, sudden burst of revelation. No, it was a painstakingly slow, agonizing journey, a conscious unburdening of the toxic debris that had accumulated within me. It required immense courage to excavate the layers of denial, anger, and profound sadness that had threatened to consume me whole. Every single step felt like walking through quicksand, each breath a struggle against the suffocating reality of what had transpired. Initially, the shock was so absolute, so complete, that it paralyzed me. My world had fractured, and I was left standing amidst the ruins, unable to move. But slowly, painstakingly, a flicker of defiance began to ignite within. I realized that remaining captive to the pain, to the betrayal, was only allowing my husband and sister to continue their destruction of my life, even from a distance. I refused to grant them that power any longer. This was the first, crucial step towards my liberation, reclaiming my own agency, my own narrative. It meant acknowledging the deep wounds, not as a sign of weakness, but as a testament to the brutal battle I had survived. The work of healing was far from glamorous. It was messy, emotionally exhausting, and often incredibly isolating. I delved into therapy, seeking a professional guide through the labyrinth of my trauma. There, I began to unravel the complex psychological threads of their deception, understanding that their actions were a reflection of their own brokenness, not a measure of my worth. This was a monumental shift in perspective. For so long, I had internalized the betrayal, questioning my judgment, my intuition, my very being. Therapy helped me to externalize it, to see their choices as separate from my intrinsic value. It taught me the vital difference between empathy and enabling, between understanding and accepting unacceptable behavior. As I navigated this brutal landscape of self-discovery, the impact on my son remained my paramount concern. He was an innocent bystander, caught in the crossfire of an unimaginable family drama. Protecting his heart, helping him process this raw, ugly truth, became my driving force. We talked, openly and honestly, in ways I never thought possible. I witnessed his own journey through confusion, anger, and sorrow, mirroring so much of my own. It was in supporting him, in being his unwavering rock, that I discovered a new depth of strength within myself. Our bond, once threatened by the seismic shock of betrayal, was not just salvaged, it was reforged, stronger and more resilient than ever before, bound by shared vulnerability and unwavering love. This journey also forced me to redefine what family truly meant to me. The traditional, idealized image I had held shattered, replaced by a more nuanced, more realistic understanding. Family isn't just about blood. It's about loyalty, respect, and unconditional love. Those who willingly choose to violate those sacred trusts, regardless of genetic ties, forfeit their place. This realization was both liberating and heartbreaking. It meant grieving the loss of the family I thought I had, but also celebrating the authentic connections that remained and those new ones I would cultivate. It was about building a family of choice, founded on integrity and genuine care. The process of forgiving, not them, but myself for the anger and the pain I carried, was an ongoing challenge. Forgiveness, I learned, wasn't about excusing their actions or inviting them back into my life. It was about releasing the suffocating grip of resentment that only harmed me. It was about severing the last emotional ties to their toxicity, allowing myself to breathe freely again. This wasn't a sudden decision, but a gradual, deliberate act of self-preservation. Each time a memory surfaced, each time a flash of anger threatened to overwhelm me, I consciously chose to let it go, to refocus on my own healing and the future I was building. This period of intense introspection also brought about a profound reevaluation of my own self-worth. For years, I had inadvertently tied my identity to my roles: wife, mother, sister. The betrayal stripped those away, forcing me to confront who I was at my core, independent of those relationships. And what I found was not brokenness, but an immense reservoir of resilience, courage, and self-love that I never knew existed. I emerged from the wreckage not as a victim, but as a survivor, a warrior who had faced the darkest corners of human deceit and still found her way back to the light. This new self-awareness, this unwavering confidence in my own strength, became my shield and my compass. My definition of happiness also transformed. It was no longer dependent on external validations or the perfect facade of a life. True happiness, I discovered, resided in authenticity, in genuine connection, in the quiet moments of peace, and in the unwavering love I shared with my son and a select few trusted friends. It was in rebuilding my life on a foundation of truth and integrity, free from the insidious lies and manipulations that had once defined my existence. This wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving, about creating a life that was truly mine, built on my terms, filled with genuine joy and purpose. The journey continues, but the heavy burden is gone. I walk forward, not with bitterness, but with a quiet strength, a wisdom hard-earned, and a profound appreciation for the simple beauty of an honest life. This ordeal, while devastating, has paradoxically gifted me with an unshakable sense of self. It taught me that even when your world collapses, you have the power to rebuild it, brick by painful brick, into something even more magnificent than before. My story is a testament to the fact that betrayal can shatter you, but it can also purify you, revealing an inner resilience you never knew you possessed. If you've walked a similar path, remember this: you are not alone, your pain is valid, and within you lies the extraordinary capacity to heal, to rise, and to rewrite your own triumphant ending. Your strength is your power. If you've walked a similar path, remember this: you are not alone, your pain is valid, and within you lies the extraordinary capacity to heal, to rise, and to rewrite your own triumphant ending. Your strength is your power. But what does harnessing that power truly entail after such an earth-shattering betrayal? It's not a switch you flip. It's a grueling, painstaking journey back to yourself, a reconstruction from the very foundations of your soul. For me, that journey began in the deepest abyss of despair, a place where the air felt thick with deceit and the silence screamed of broken trust. The initial shock of catching my husband with my son's fiancée, compounded by the horrifying realization that she was my long-lost sister, left me utterly paralyzed. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a carefully constructed web of lies, a sinister family betrayal that had been festering right under my nose for years. The man I loved, the sister I grieved, had conspired to dismantle my perfect world, and in doing so, had plunged my son into an utterly toxic relationship. The immediate aftermath was a blur of raw emotion, blinding rage, profound grief for the life I thought I had, and a gnawing confusion that tore at my sanity. How could this be real? How could people I loved so deeply inflict such excruciating emotional trauma? The first step, the truly agonizing one, was simply acknowledging the truth. No sugarcoating, no denial, just the stark, brutal reality of what had transpired. This wasn't a minor marital spat, it was a full-scale family implosion. Every memory, every shared laugh, every quiet moment with my husband, and even with my son's fiancée, was now tainted with the bitter taste of deception. It felt as though a part of me, the trusting, optimistic part, had died that day. And in its place, a fierce, protective instinct for my son began to burn. How was I going to protect him from this fallout? How would he ever recover from such a devastating revelation? Navigating this emotional minefield required more than just resilience. It demanded a complete reevaluation of everything I believed in. My core values of loyalty, honesty, and familial love were shattered. It became clear very quickly that I couldn't navigate this alone. The sheer weight of the betrayal, the psychological impact of discovering such intricate deceit, was overwhelming. This is where professional help became not just an option, but an absolute necessity. Talking to a therapist offered a lifeline, a space where I could unravel the knots of my pain, anger, and confusion without judgment. It helped me differentiate between what was real and what was merely a figment of their elaborate deception, allowing me to slowly piece together the fractured narrative of my own life. The process of healing from betrayal, especially one of this magnitude involving multiple layers of intimate relationships, is nonlinear. There were days when I felt a glimmer of hope, a surge of strength, only to be dragged back down by a memory, a phantom pain, or the sheer injustice of it all. The struggle to regain trust, not just in others, but in my own judgment, was immense. I questioned everything. Was I blind? Was I too trusting? Was I somehow complicit in allowing this darkness to fester? These self-doubt spirals were as destructive as the betrayal itself, and overcoming them required conscious, daily effort. It meant actively challenging those negative thoughts, reminding myself that their choices reflected their character, not mine. This journey wasn't merely about surviving. It was about thriving again, about rebuilding a life that was authentic and free from the shadows of their deceit. For my son, the wounds ran deep. To discover that his father, his role model, had betrayed his mother with his fiancée, who also turned out to be his aunt, was a psychological blow that no child should ever endure. My primary focus shifted to guiding him through his own grief and anger, helping him understand that he was a victim of their manipulation, not responsible for their heinous actions. It demanded immense emotional strength from me, to be a beacon of stability for him when my own world felt like shifting sand. We leaned on each other, forging a new bond born from shared adversity and a mutual quest for healing. Rebuilding my life meant defining new boundaries, setting clear expectations for respect and honesty, and recognizing that not all relationships could, or should, be salvaged. The concept of forgiveness became a complex, multi-layered discussion. Forgiving them seemed impossible, and frankly, unnecessary for my own healing. My focus wasn't on absolving them of their guilt, but on releasing myself from the burden of their actions. It was about forgiving myself for trusting, for loving, for believing in the illusion they had so skillfully crafted. This self-forgiveness was a powerful act of liberation, allowing me to sever the emotional ties that bound me to their toxic narrative. It empowered me to reclaim my peace. Finding strength in the face of such profound family betrayal is an ongoing evolution. It's about recognizing the quiet victories. The morning you wake up feeling a little lighter, the day you laugh genuinely without a pang of guilt, the moment you realize you're no longer defined by the trauma, but by your courage to overcome it. My story, a harrowing tale of a husband's infidelity and a sister's unthinkable deception, became a testament not to victimhood, but to the indomitable human spirit. It's about discovering an inner wellspring of power you never knew existed until you were forced to tap into it. This journey has transformed me, forging a stronger, wiser, and more resilient woman from the ashes of betrayal. I now stand firm, not as a casualty, but as a survivor, ready to embrace a future built on genuine trust and unwavering self-respect. The woman who stands before you today is not the same woman who once believed in a perfect life. That naive belief was shattered, yes, but in its place, something far more profound has emerged, a deep, unshakable understanding of my own inherent strength and an unwavering commitment to my emotional and mental well-being. This journey, forged in the brutal fires of deceit, has truly transformed me, elevating me from the ashes of betrayal into a state of heightened resilience and genuine self-respect. The initial shock, the earth-shattering realization of what had transpired, tested every fiber of my being. For days, I existed in a haze, moving through life like a ghost, haunted by the vivid images of their deception and the chilling revelation of my sister's true, hidden identity. The betrayal was a double-edged sword, cutting deep not just through my marriage, but through the very fabric of my family, twisting everything I once held sacred into something grotesque and utterly unrecognizable. The pain, raw and searing, became a constant, unwelcome companion. It manifested relentlessly in sleepless nights, in the gut-wrenching realization that everything I thought I knew was a meticulously crafted lie. My mind compulsively replayed every interaction, every casual glance, every innocent conversation, desperately searching for clues, for warnings I had so tragically missed. The guilt was immense, a heavy, suffocating blanket. How could I have been so profoundly blind? How could I have allowed such insidious evil to fester so perilously close to my heart, so devastatingly close to my innocent son? This relentless internal torment was perhaps the hardest battle, convincing myself that my innate trust, my boundless love, my very nature, were not weaknesses, but qualities ruthlessly exploited. Yet survival, I have come to understand, isn't merely about enduring. It is about actively and painstakingly rebuilding, brick by painful brick. My crucial first step was unequivocally acknowledging the devastating depth of the wound. No sugarcoating, no denial. It hurt with an intensity one never imagined. It was ugly beyond measure, and I knew it would demand immense, unwavering work to truly heal. I courageously sought professional help, a decision that quickly proved to be my absolute lifeline. Therapy swiftly became a sanctuary, a sacred, non-judgmental space where I could finally unravel the tangled, chaotic threads of my emotions, processing the trauma without fear. My therapist, an invaluable guide, helped me profoundly understand the complex psychology of betrayal, the insidious manipulative tactics often employed by deceivers, and most importantly, how to bravely reclaim my narrative from their deceitful, suffocating grasp. It was never about finding fault within myself. It was about truly comprehending the destructive dynamics of such toxic relationships. One of the most crucial lessons I absorbed was the profound distinction between naive trust and informed trust. Before this cataclysm, I had given my trust freely, believing in the inherent goodness of those I loved. Now, I understand with crystal clarity that trust must be painstakingly earned. It must be profoundly reciprocal, and it must be consistently backed by concrete, undeniable actions, not just empty, facile words. This monumental shift in perspective was not cynical. It was, in fact, incredibly empowering. It meant I was no longer a passive recipient of others' dubious intentions, but an active, vigilant guardian of my own precious emotional safety. This newfound, Hard-won wisdom extended its protective embrace to every aspect of my life, profoundly influencing how I interact with new people and how I fiercely protect my most cherished inner circle. It's fundamentally about setting firm, unyielding boundaries, recognizing subtle red flags with acute precision, and possessing the profound courage to decisively walk away from anything and anyone that threatens my hard-earned peace or deliberately undermines my intrinsic self-worth. The process of confronting both my husband and my sister was excruciatingly agonizing, yet undeniably necessary for my liberation. It wasn't about futilely seeking their hollow apologies. I knew, deep down, that any remorse they might express would be utterly hollow, born far more out of craven self-preservation than any semblance of genuine regret. Instead, it was powerfully about standing firmly in my truth, asserting my newly established, non-negotiable boundaries, and unequivocally declaring that their insidious, tangled web of lies would absolutely no longer define my reality. There were tears, of course, from me, tears of profound grief for the stolen future, and tears of righteous fury for the unimaginable depths of their deceit. But through it all, there was an emerging sense of crystalline clarity, a quiet, resolute strength that settled deep within my very core. I looked at them, truly looked at them, unblinkingly, and for the very first time, I saw not the people I had once loved so blindly, but the cold, calculating architects of my devastation. In that pivotal moment, something fundamentally shifted within me. The suffocating emotional chains that had bound me to them began to irrevocably loosen, then shatter. My son, my precious, innocent boy, became my unwavering North Star throughout this horrifying tempest. Protecting him from the full, brutal force of this grotesque truth, while simultaneously guiding him with infinite care through his own profound pain, became my absolute paramount mission. We had countless difficult conversations, brutally honest ones, carefully tailored to his tender age and his developing emotional capacity. I explained to him that some people make very bad choices, choices that inflict deep, lasting wounds upon others. I painstakingly reassured him that none of this was ever his fault, that his love was pure and true, and that he intrinsically deserved so much better. We bravely went to therapy together, collaboratively creating a vital, safe space for him to express his confusion, anger, and profound heartbreak. Watching him navigate such profound, seismic betrayal at such a tender age was excruciatingly painful, yet his astonishing resilience inspired me beyond measure. We leaned on each other, finding immense solace in our shared, unbreakable bond, strengthening our sacred mother-son connection in ways I never could have possibly imagined. This shared, arduous journey of healing forged an unbreakable bond, a living testament to our enduring love amidst the utter chaos. Rebuilding our lives involved radical, often terrifying changes. The house, once a beloved symbol of our perfect family, now felt utterly tainted. We moved. We changed schools. We started completely fresh, literally uprooting our entire existence, creating a brand new sanctuary where we could both heal and grow without the lingering, suffocating shadows of the past. It was terrifying, undeniably financially challenging, and profoundly emotionally draining, but every single step felt like a triumphant reclaiming of our stolen future. We embraced new routines, discovered exciting new passions, and painstakingly built a new support system comprised of genuine, trustworthy friends who proved their loyalty. This was not merely a physical relocation. It was a profound, transformative psychological shift, an unequivocal declaration that we would absolutely not be prisoners of their destructive actions. We were charting a completely new course, one defined solely by our conscious choices, our unwavering values, and our fierce, unwavering commitment to each other's happiness. Forgiveness, a concept so often misunderstood, became a fundamental cornerstone of my intricate healing process, though absolutely not in the way many might conventionally expect. I did not, and will not, forgive them for what they did. Their actions were, unequivocally, unforgivable, a betrayal of the highest, most sacred order. Instead, I learned the immensely powerful, liberating act of forgiving myself. I forgave myself for my past blindness, for not seeing the glaring red flags, for believing so innocently in a beautifully constructed fantasy, for allowing my heart to be so utterly open and vulnerable. I forgave myself for the immense pain I endured, finally recognizing with clarity that it was a direct consequence of their vile choices, not a reflection of my inherent worth. This monumental act of self-forgiveness was utterly liberating. It decisively severed the invisible, yet suffocating, ties of anger and resentment that had relentlessly threatened to keep me irrevocably tethered to their impenetrable darkness. It allowed me to finally, mercifully, let go of the corrosive bitterness, not for their undeserving sake, but solely for my own profound peace and spiritual liberation. It freed up vital emotional space, allowing authentic joy, genuine hope, and exhilarating new beginnings to bravely blossom within me. The indelible lessons etched into my soul from this horrific crucible of betrayal are countless and profound. I've learned with absolute certainty that true strength lies not in futilely avoiding pain, but in confronting it bravely, heeding. It lies profoundly in possessing the sheer courage to meticulously dismantle a life painstakingly built on insidious lies and then, with raw determination, construct something authentically genuine, profoundly enduring, and truly worthy of my spirit. I've learned that true family, a concept I once took for granted, is unequivocally defined not by shared blood, but by unwavering loyalty, transparent honesty, and steadfast, unconditional support. Those who so callously betray your sacred trust, regardless of their genetic ties, instantaneously forfeit their inherent right to that most precious and revered title. My story, while undeniably agonizing in its origin, is also one of profound, triumphant survival. It stands as an undeniable testament to the incredible human spirit's boundless capacity to not only endure the unimaginable, but to heal fundamentally, and to gloriously emerge immeasurably stronger, wiser, and more complete, even from the very darkest, most desolate depths of despair. If you are listening intently to this, and find yourself unconsciously nodding along, recognizing chilling echoes of your own profound heartbreak and betrayal within my words, please, I implore you, know this truth deep in your soul. You are unequivocally not alone in this fight. Your pain is absolutely valid. Your feelings are unequivocally real. And you possess an incredible, vast, and as yet untapped reservoir of strength deep within you, even if you tragically cannot feel its immense power right now. Seek immediate help. Talk to a trusted friend, a compassionate family member, or, most vitally, a professional therapist who can guide you. Do not carry this impossibly heavy burden alone for another moment. Your journey to healing may indeed be long and undeniably arduous, perhaps filled with countless moments of profound doubt and overwhelming despair, but I promise you, it is an essential journey absolutely worth taking. Every single step, no matter how infinitesimally small it may seem, is an undeniable, powerful victory. Embrace your nascent resilience with open arms. Reclaim your shattered narrative. And never, ever, under any circumstances, allow someone else's despicable betrayal to define your intrinsic worth or dim your magnificent, irreplaceable light. You are a survivor, an undeniable warrior, and your future, gloriously unburdened by their darkness, is patiently waiting for you to courageously build it anew. This profound transformation is not an ending. It is a powerful, exhilarating, and completely liberating new beginning. That profound transformation, the one not an ending but a powerful, exhilarating, and completely liberating new beginning, truly became the blueprint for my very existence. The initial shock, the soul-crushing despair, they were undeniably real. They were heavy chains dragging me down, threatening to drown me in a sea of betrayal and sorrow. But even in that abyss, a tiny spark flickered. It was the spark of survival, the innate human drive to find light even when surrounded by the deepest shadows. I realized, with a clarity that both terrified and empowered me, that my story wasn't unequivocally over. This wasn't the final chapter written by their deceit. It was merely the messy, devastating prologue to a brand new narrative, one that I would author. This wasn't about erasing the past, but about courageously stepping into a future unburdened by their darkness. Reclaiming my authentic identity was the very first, most crucial step. For so long, I had been defined by my roles: a loving wife, a devoted mother, a loyal sister. When those definitions crumbled, leaving behind only the wreckage of broken promises and shattered trust, I felt utterly lost. Who was I, divorced from those titles? The answer, I discovered, lay not in what I had been, but in who I was courageously becoming. It was about stripping away the layers of suffocating hurt and searing anger, peeling back the pain to reveal the truly resilient woman beneath, a woman who possessed an inherent strength I had never truly acknowledged. This wasn't a superficial makeover. It was an excavation of my very soul, a deep dive into the core of my being to rediscover the unwavering resilience that had always resided within me. I started asking myself questions that had long been dormant. What truly brings me genuine joy, independent of anyone else's expectations? What are my deepest passions? What fundamental values do I stand for, now that my foundation had been so brutally shaken? These weren't easy questions, and the answers certainly didn't surface overnight. They demanded relentless introspection, brutal honesty, and a profound willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about myself. It was a truly painstaking process, akin to meticulously reconstructing a shattered priceless vase, piece by fragile piece, to create something new and, perhaps, even more authentically beautiful in its hard-won imperfection. This transformative journey of self-discovery was not merely an act of healing. It was an act of profound, revolutionary self-love. I owed it to myself, and crucially, to my son, to emerge from this crucible not diminished or broken, but powerfully refined and undeniably whole. The processing of such an immense, gut-wrenching betrayal felt like navigating a treacherous, fog-laden labyrinth. There were countless days I was utterly overwhelmed by a tidal wave of scorching fury, wanting nothing more than to unleash my incandescent rage. How could my husband, who vowed to cherish me, and my sister, my own flesh and blood, conspire in such a twisted, sickening act of calculated deceit? The anger was a visceral, burning entity. But then, it would often morph into profound, suffocating grief not just for the devastating loss of the marriage, not just for the irrevocable severance of the sisterly bond, but for the irretrievable loss of the future I had envisioned, the crushing loss of my innocence, the violent shattering of my reality. This grief was heavy, a suffocating blanket. Learning to sit with these overwhelming emotions, to acknowledge their raw validity without letting them utterly consume me, became a daily, grueling practice. My compassionate therapist skillfully guided me through the complex stages of acceptance, emphasizing repeatedly that acceptance isn't about condoning their heinous actions, but rather about accepting the unalterable reality of what happened so I could finally begin to move forward. Forgiveness, I eventually learned, wasn't about excusing their unforgivable, calculated deceit. It was about courageously releasing myself from the suffocating prison of bitterness and corrosive resentment. It was a radical gift I consciously chose to give myself, a profound liberation of my own battered but resilient spirit. Protecting my son, my innocent, unsuspecting boy, became my fiercest, most non-negotiable priority. He was, entirely unknowingly, a helpless pawn in their cruel, manipulative game. The impending revelation of his fiancée's true, shocking identity, coupled with his father's active, appalling complicity, promised to shatter his world. The immense weight of this horrifying truth, the agonizing responsibility of how and when to reveal it, pressed down on me like an insurmountable physical burden. How do you summon the words, the courage, to tell your beloved son that the woman he loves is not only his father's despicable mistress, but also his biological aunt? And how do you begin to explain that his father actively participated in this elaborate, soul-destroying charade for years? There was no gentle, easy way to deliver such an utterly devastating blow. I knew I couldn't shield him forever, but I could control the painful narrative, ensuring he heard it directly from me, delivered with unwavering love, profound empathy, and steadfast support, rather than from their callous, unfeeling mouths. My primary, overarching goal was to meticulously ensure his emotional well-being, to painstakingly help him navigate the inevitable tsunami of pain, confusion, and profound disappointment. This meant consciously prioritizing his fragile healing above my own burning need for vengeance. It meant forcing myself to be incredibly strong for him, even when my own world felt like it was irrevocably crumbling. Our sacred bond, once a cherished given, now required deliberate, tender, almost Herculean nurturing to survive this unprecedented, unimaginable strain. The very concept of family was utterly redefined for me, brutally stripped down to its painful essence. The picture-perfect ideal I once naively cherished had been savagely ripped to shreds, revealing a horrifying, festering darkness beneath its polished surface. It forced me to critically and ruthlessly evaluate who my true allies were, who genuinely stood by me through this inferno, and who had been complicit, either actively through their actions or through their appalling, silent observation. It was an agonizing culling, a painful but absolutely necessary purging of toxic elements. I learned, with heart-wrenching clarity, that blood ties do not automatically equate to unwavering loyalty, genuine love, or even basic respect. Sometimes, the truest, most enduring family consists of those chosen few who selflessly stand with you in the absolute darkest hours, offering unconditional love, a patient listening ear, and unwavering, steadfast belief in your inherent strength. This stark realization was both utterly heartbreaking and incredibly empowering. It taught me to value raw authenticity above all else and to meticulously surround myself with people who consistently elevate me, who build me up, rather than those who diminish me. My trusted circle became smaller, but infinitely, profoundly stronger, meticulously built on unshakable foundations of genuine trust, transparent honesty, and mutual, profound respect, not on fabricated illusions or shared DNA alone. Finding profound strength in my unexpected vulnerability was another deep, transformative lesson. For so long, I had tried to project an impenetrable image of unwavering composure, a woman who meticulously had it all together. This devastating betrayal stripped away that carefully constructed facade, leaving me utterly raw, exposed, and undeniably broken. But in that very vulnerability, I found an unexpected, potent power. When I allowed myself to be truly seen, broken, deeply hurt, consumed by anger, I also allowed myself to be truly supported. Sharing my incredibly raw story, even in vulnerable fragments, with my most trusted friends and my unwavering therapist, wasn't a sign of weakness. It was an act of immense, profound courage. It was a brave acknowledgement that I didn't have to carry this crushing, soul-destroying burden entirely alone. It was in those moments of shared, empathetic vulnerability that genuine, human connection formed, powerfully reinforcing the crucial idea that authentic healing is not a solitary, isolated journey. It's a collective, collaborative effort, meticulously built on profound empathy, mutual understanding, and shared resilience. The complex path forward, though still winding, fraught with peril, and utterly uncertain, started to become clearer, more discernible. It began with setting unwavering, impenetrable boundaries. No longer would I allow myself to be a passive victim of their cruel manipulations, their selfish desires. My home, my life, my precious peace became non-negotiable territories, fiercely and unapologetically protected. This meant taking definitive, decisive action regarding my marriage, painstakingly navigating the convoluted complexities of legal separation and eventual divorce, and finally confronting my sister with the painful, unvarnished truth of her heinous actions, not to seek a hollow apology or an explanation, but to establish a definitive, uncrossable distance for my own emotional and psychological well-being. It was about reclaiming absolute control over my own narrative, my own destiny, one courageous, empowered step at a time. Professional guidance, encompassing both legal counsel and psychological therapy, was absolutely instrumental in navigating these turbulent, storm-tossed waters. They provided the essential structure, the invaluable tools, and the unwavering support I desperately needed to meticulously dismantle the shattered remnants of my old life and painstakingly construct a new one, a life on my terms, filled with genuine authenticity and true peace. This wasn't about seeking petty revenge or superficial retribution. It was about seeking profound justice for myself, and especially for my innocent son. It was about ensuring that such a profound, soul-crushing betrayal did not go unacknowledged, unaddressed, or unpunished. The survivor mindset, which began as a desperate, flickering ember, grew into an unshakable, roaring flame within me. This harrowing experience, while undeniably agonizing, forged within me a resilience, a steely determination I never knew I possessed. It taught me the profound, undeniable truth that even when life throws its most devastating, unexpected curveballs, when the very ground beneath you feels like it's irrevocably crumbling into an abyss, you possess the inherent, incredible power to rebuild. You can redefine happiness, not as the naive absence of pain, but as the remarkable ability to find profound joy, genuine peace, and unwavering strength amidst life's inevitable, relentless storms. This arduous journey has been an undeniable testament to the indomitable human spirit, powerfully proving that we are far stronger, far more capable than we ever dared to imagine, capable of not just enduring unimaginable hardship, but of truly thriving, flourishing, and creating a life of profound purpose, even after the most heartbreaking, gut-wrenching betrayals imaginable. My story stands as undeniable, living proof that profound healing is indeed possible, and a new, more authentic, more fulfilling life is patiently waiting on the other side of the pain, ready to be embraced.